and thank you for joining me. Today, we're returning to Fallout 76, where we're going to spend another 1,000 scrip on 3-star ranged legendary weapons, and as always, I'll take a few moments to talk about each weapon, about what makes it good, bad, or mediocre. And remember, if you enjoy content like this, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and it doesn't cost you anything. Alright, let's go on ahead and get started here. So for our first 3-star ranged legendary weapon today, we get a Troubleshooters short Western Revolver with bashing damage increased by 50% and hits having a chance to generate a stealth field. So the Troubleshooters effect is one of the Slayer's effects, and it's one of the more effective Slayer's effects because robots, there are a number of times when you're going to be fighting robots, and you know it because of anytime you're going to go and run a nuke silo, or if you want to do the encrypted event, or when the daily ops include robots. So there's definitely times for that, and robots are not amongst the squishiest creatures in the game, so getting some extra damage against robots can actually be pretty useful. The bashing damage increased by 50%. That is pretty much worthless on most weapons, really on pretty much every weapon except for the minigun. If you're going to put a shredder mod on it, then it's pretty good, but this is not a minigun, doesn't have the shredder mod, so bashing damage is just not going to do a whole lot for you, even with that plus 50% increase from the legendary effect on the 2nd star here. The his having a chance to generate a stealth field, that's an interesting effect that I haven't actually had a chance to try out yet, but this is not really the best weapon for it, just because there is no way to suppress it. So, generating a stealth field, it might help you get back into stealth for just a moment, but this weapon is really loud, so even if it does bring you back into stealth for a moment, you're probably going to come out of it the moment you fire the weapon again. So it's kind of a lost effect on a weapon like this. The short Western Revolver is not really the best pistol in the game, in my opinion. So anyway, let's go on ahead and move on to the next roll here. And here we've got a Stalkers Ultrasight Gatling Laser with VATS critical hits doing plus 50% damage and 25% less VATS AP cost. So the Stalkers effect is probably, in my opinion, the worst, at least for ranged weapons, 1st star effect in the game. It really just doesn't do anything at this point. I mean, maybe it does something. I've done a little bit of testing with various weapons with the Stalkers effect, and I'm not really convinced. I sometimes miss when I'm using a Stalker's weapon and I'm not in combat, which with that plus 100% VATS accuracy, I shouldn't, and then I am using VATS for that testing. So, yeah. Basically like not having a 1st star at all. The VATS critical hits doing plus 50% damage, that's a very good effect, but this is not the weapon you really want that effect on. The Ultrasight Gatling Laser, it fires extremely fast, which means that it is going to burn through your AP extremely fast, no matter how high of an AP pool you happen to have. So that's going to greatly limit how many criticals you can get with a weapon like this, so again, not really the best weapon for that effect. And then the 25% less VATS AP cost, that does synergize very well with the 2nd effect, but again, this is probably not the best weapon for it. It will allow you to get some more VATS criticals and just VATS shots off with the weapon like this before your AP pool depletes. I just don't think it's going to be enough to really make a weapon like this truly useful in VATS. Some heavy weapons that fire a bit slower could benefit from that a little bit more, but this weapon just fires so quickly, and that is really one of its strengths, is just how quickly it fires, but it just fires so quickly that it's just going to chew through your AP pool very, very quickly, even with those effects. So let's go on ahead and move on to the next one here. And here we've got a Junkies short Ultrasight laser pistol with bashing damage increased by 50% again, and 25% less VATS AP cost. So the Junkies effect is one of the best effects in the game for full health builds. It gives you plus 50% damage if you have 5 addictions, which that sounds like a major drawback, but if you choose your addictions wisely, either based on the chems that you typically use just as you're running around anyway because you like using the effects for them, or because the penalties that they provide don't really adversely affect your build all that much, then it's really not that much of a drawback. And the plus 50% damage is pretty much as much as you can get with a full health build. So the Junkies effect is very good. Unfortunately, the Ultrasight laser pistol is even worse than the standard laser pistol. That's quite the opposite of the Ultrasight Gatling laser versus the standard Gatling laser that we just saw. We just saw the Ultrasight Gatling laser, which was the better version. In this case, the Ultrasight laser pistol is the worse version. So, and the laser pistols in Fallout 76, unfortunately, don't do very well, even when they're modded out to be rifles, just because of the way armor works for energy weapons. So being worse than that just makes a weapon like this pretty much worthless. The bashing damage increased by 50%. Well, I talked about that earlier. This is not a minigun, so it's pretty much worthless. And the less VATS AP cost on a weapon like this could be very good, except for the fact that it's an Ultrasight laser pistol. So overall, this one's a dud, unfortunately, because the first and third effect are actually pretty good for it. But let's go on ahead and move on to the next one and see what we get. And here we've got a Zealots auto grenade launcher with plus 50% limb damage and VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. So the Zealots effect is another one of the Slayer's effects, and it's probably a mediocre in utility. When you're fighting regular Scorched, it's not really going to do a whole lot just because the Scorched are pretty squishy to begin with, and you should be able to take them down with a half-decent build, with even a non-legendary weapon, pretty quickly. So it's not doing a whole lot for you there, but it does affect the Scorch Beast and the Scorch Beast Queen, so you can get some utility out of a Zealot's weapon in those fights. So it's not totally worthless, like some of the other Slayer's effects can be, more or less. The plus 50% limb damage, that is not really one of my favorite effects. I'm not sure that it's really that effective on a weapon like this either, because if you're using the auto grenade launcher, you're probably just wanting to kill things as quickly as possible in 1 or 2 shots from the weapon, which if you mod it out right, run your Demolitions Expert, you probably can, as long as you're fighting your typical enemies, ghouls, super mutants, maybe robots, things like that. If you take it to a Scorch Beast Queen fight, or even just Scorch Beast, they're very resistant to explosions, so you're not going to have a good time with a weapon like this at a fight like that. But, just for running around, doing a little bit of farming, or even just, burning up some of those 40mm grenades that you inevitably end up with in your inventory, it could be fun. The VATS critical meter filling 50% faster. A weapon like this you could use effectively in VATS, so you could get some utility out of that. And I'm not sure that that's the best choice, though, just because with launcher weapons like this, when you're using VATS, if you miss, then the projectile just kind of goes off into nothingness and nothing ever happens. If you are free aiming, either hip firing or aiming down the sights there, then at least if you miss, you're still going to get the explosion and probably going to get some splash damage against your primary targets. So, there's something to be said for both, because you definitely have more accuracy with VATS, but when you miss, you get nothing. So, anyway, let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a Ghoul Slayer's Gauss rifle with 25% faster fire rate and 25% less VATS AP cost. So, the Ghoul Slayer's effect is probably one of the less useful of the Slayer's effects. Not because there's not times when you would fight ghouls. There certainly is. Anytime you go to the golf club, or if you feel like going to the Charleston Capitol building, there are ghouls sometimes in the daily ops and so on. It's just that ghouls are generally squishy enough that you don't really need plus 50% damage to them specifically. So overall, I feel like it's just kind of a lost effect in general, not just specifically on this weapon, but just in general. The 25% faster fire rate, that's kind of a lost effect on this weapon specifically. The Gauss rifle is possibly the most powerful rifle in the game, and it hits hard, especially when you charge it up, but it is slow firing, especially when you charge it up. And the 25% faster fire rate, it really doesn't change that. If you're not charging it up, the weapon already fires as quickly as you can pull the trigger. So, unless that 25% faster fire rate allows you to pull the trigger faster, it's really not doing anything. And it does not allow the weapon to charge up faster, so it's not doing anything there either. The 25% less VATS AP cost, that could be very good on a weapon like this, just because a weapon like this could be very, very good in VATS, just because you can get the extra damage from targeting weak points, such as the head, or other weak points, you know, such as the fusion cores on the sentry bots and so forth. But also, getting some extra damage from the criticals is also going to be a good thing. So, on a weapon that fires a little bit slow like this, you really do want to get as many one-hit kills as possible. So, the 25% less VATS AP cost, allowing you to keep using it in VATS to get those more precise shots, is a very good thing. Unfortunately, that's probably the only good effect on this weapon, so, or at least specifically for this weapon. So, let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got an Executioner shorthand made with plus 25% damage while aiming and 250 damage resistance while reloading. So the Executioner's effect is one of the better effects for both full health and low health builds, but it is very situational. It's good because it is still multiplicative, so when it says plus 50% damage when your target is below 40% health, it's actually giving you plus 50% of the damage that you see on your damage card there. So that's a very good thing. Most of the time when you see plus 50% damage, for example on the Slayer's effects, that's not what you're getting. You're getting plus 50% of the base damage of the weapon. But to really gain utility out of that effect, you need to be spending more than about 3 or 4 shots on an enemy for it to really benefit you. And that means that the weapon either needs to be relatively low damage, like miniguns, for example, fire very fast but are very low damage per shot, so they do very well with the Executioner's effect. And on some enemies, the handmade and things like that are very good because, you know, when you're fighting Behemoth or Mirelurk Queen or the boss, any of the bosses in the game, then you can get a lot of utility out of that. But on your daily farming, it's not necessarily going to do a whole lot for you on a weapon that you're already killing things in 1 or 2 shots with anyway. That's why I say it's very situational, but in the situations where it's good, it's very good. The plus 25% damage while aiming, that is a very good effect. It's basically free damage if you're the type of player who likes to aim down the sights. If you're not, it's probably not going to do a whole lot for you, but if you are, it's literally just free damage. So, you know, again, very situational, but in this case, it's situational based on your personal playstyle. I'm not really the type to aim down sights myself that much, but if you are, then that's a very good effect. The 250 damage resistance while reloading, it's not a terrible effect. It does give you a little bit of extra protection while you're reloading, and that's a good time to have some extra protection because you can't be shooting back while you're reloading. But at the same time, if you're running armor that has between 300 and 400 damage resistance on it, then you're already starting to see some major diminishing returns on the protection that additional damage resistance is going to give you. So overall, it's not one of my favorite effects. It's not the worst. It does do something for you. It's just not really the best effect in my opinion, but the first 2 effects on this are very good, and this one probably will end up on my vendor. Let's go on ahead and look at the next one. And here we've got an Instigating Black Powder Rifle with plus 25% damage while aiming and 15% faster reload. So this is an interesting weapon. The Black Powder Rifle fires very, very slowly because you have to reload it between every shot. I am aware that there's a glitch to get around that, but I don't play using that glitch. So the way I play, you have to reload it after every shot. And so that means that to get any real utility out of the Black Powder Rifle, you really need those one-shot kills. The Instigating effect, even though it's not really double damage anymore, that was nerfed a while back to where it's double the base damage of the weapon, then it is still effective on high base damage weapons, and the Black Powder Rifle definitely falls into that category. So getting double damage when the enemy is at full health, that's great. And the plus 25% damage while aiming, that's also a very good thing. So, if you're the type of player who likes to free aim, this could be a very, very powerful, although situational weapon for you, because you'll be able to take things out very, very easily in one shot most of the time, whether it be a super mutant, a robot, whatever. Now, you might not be able to take out behemoths, Mirelurk queens, or of course endgame bosses in one shot, but which makes this weapon maybe good for an opening salvo against them, but not necessarily the best for your sustained fire against them. But the 15% faster reload is also very good on a weapon like this, just because of how frequently you're going to have to be reloading. So anything that speeds that up is going to be a good thing. The 15% faster reload is really good on any weapon, but it is really good on this weapon. So this is a weapon I might actually just play around with just to see how good it actually is. Anyway, let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got an Aristocrat submachine gun with more bashing damage, increased by 50%, and plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. So the Aristocrat's effect is another one of the best effects for full health builds, because it gives you plus 50% damage if you have 29,000 caps or more on your character at the time. If you have less than that, it's going to diminish. But overall, once you get past a certain point in the game and you have most of the plans that you care about buying from the train stations and things like that, then it's really not that difficult to keep your character over 29,000 caps. So the drawback on that can actually be less than that of Junkies, depending on your playstyle. Of course, if you're the type of player who uses a lot of chems just as part of your normal playstyle, then Junkies could be better for you. But it's really kind of comes down to personal preference there. They're both very good. The bashing damage increased by 50%. Well, this is not a minigun, so we're going to move on. The plus 50 damage resistance while aiming, I feel kind of the same way about it that I do about the 250 damage resistance while reloading. Now, this one is a little more useful if you're the type of player who likes to aim down sights, because it's going to give you that damage resistance anytime that you're aiming, which is probably going to be more frequently than when you're reloading, at least for players who enjoy aiming down sights. But again, you're still going to be facing those diminishing returns, so I don't know that it's really doing all that much for you, but it is doing something. So overall, this one's got a good solid first effect, but overall, not really great. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And here we've got a Troubleshooters harpoon gun, with VATS critical hits doing plus 50% damage and 25% less VATS AP cost. So this one's kind of interesting. I don't know that it's necessarily that good, but the Troubleshooters effect I talked about earlier, and, you know, if you're looking to take down some robots with a sniper weapon in the form of a heavy gun, then this is the weapon for you. And it does allow you to use VATS on a weapon like this pretty effectively, just because it has a low fire rate, so you're not going to burn through your AP so quickly like you would on an Ultrasight Gatling laser, for example. So the VATS critical hit's doing plus 50% damage. If you choose to use VATS with a weapon like this, you could definitely get some mileage out of that and get some extra damage. The 25% less VATS AP cost, well, that synergizes very, very well with the second effect, and the fact that this weapon can be effectively used in VATS, unlike most heavy weapons. So if you're a heavy gunner and you feel like, you know, running around and playing sniper for a little while with VATS, this could be the weapon for you. Unfortunately, the Troubleshooters is not the best first effect, but it's not the worst. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Actually, the last one. And here we've got a Nocturnal double-barrel shotgun with plus 50% VATS hit chance, and hits have a chance to generate a stealth field. So the Nocturnal effect did get a buff when they did the legendary effect rebalancing a few patches back, so that it no longer gives the penalty during the daytime to damage. It used to be that during the daytime, a Nocturnal weapon did less damage than a non-legendary weapon, which in most players' minds made the Nocturnal weapons literally worse than non-legendary versions. That's no longer the case, but you still only get the damage bonus at night. That's not such a terrible thing if you're the type of player who will remember to switch weapons based on in-game time of day. I am not that type of player, so I don't find them that useful, but the damage bonus from the Nocturnal effect is fairly substantial if you are that type of player. The plus 50% VATS hit chance, that's one of my favorite effects, and it's actually very good on a weapon like this as well, because when you use a shotgun in VATS, it does a good job of concentrating all of the pellets that you fire onto the same target. And getting that extra VATS hit chance, that's very useful. Unfortunately, it does not give you more effective range on a shotgun the way it does on most other weapons, just because once you get past the range on the card for the weapon, the drop-off for the damage on shotguns is 90% as opposed to 50% for most other weapons. So using a shotgun outside of its optimum range is really just not an effective strategy, even with the plus 50% VATS hit chance. The hits having a chance to generate a stealth field, again, that's kind of a lost effect on a weapon like this just because there's no suppressor for the double barrel shotgun, which means even if it does allow you to drop back into stealth for just a moment, the next time you pull the trigger, you're going to be out of stealth again. So overall, this one's not really a great weapon. We did get a couple of interesting ones, one that's going to go on the vendor and one that I might play around with. But anyway, I'll be back next week to see what we get, and thank you for tuning in. I'll talk to you then.